what Mouse will do as their first pick. Of course, Team Dignitas EU are going to be on the red side for all of these games, regardless of how this goes. So they'll always have that counter pick for mid if they want it. And Mouse will always be the first pick and first ban.
Yeah, and that comes from the fact that Team Dignitas had the choice on games 1 and 3. Mouse had the choice on game 2. So Mouse chose to be blue side for this game. So whereas Team Dignitas wanted the, I guess now we can call it red side advantage for counter picking in the first 2 games. Nothing too surprising yet. Same first 2 bans as last game. Red side, you have to ban Rise right now. There's,
I mean, there's no two ways about it, right?
There's not a lot of fun ways to play against the Rise. There's not too many ways to actually play against him. Now, we did see Huni play Cho'Gath against Rise, so for everybody saying it's completely, for everybody saying that it's completely not player aroundable, you can if you get a Cho'Gath. I'd like to see more of those matchups before we make a decision. Exactly, but you can. It's there. But it was Huni and it was Fnatic, so there's still, the jury's out on that one.
Well, when we see a Rise, we can delve into that topic a little bit more. But the next ban will be Hecarim, literally a repeat from the first champion select. We banned away from Wonderwear. Morgana as well was also banned, but this time this is a new ban now aimed directly at Nisbet. We'll be taking away his Alistar, caused a lot of problems for the Mouse bot lane in the early game, mainly because they just kept getting comboed over and over and over again.
Just continuous combos. I wonder whether Binsu or Mouse this time around are going to go for the Rek'Sai first pick again, because while it was available and Dan kind of got the early game to work out, I feel like obvious Gragas was far too strong, and it seems like Mouse feel the same way, as they're going to take that away. So what does that now leave Team Dignitas? They could answer with the Rek'Sai for themselves. This time Kalista is available for the bottom lane, should they want to pick it up.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was a ban from the first game, and, well, of course, went through because they banned the Alistar, so that will be the initial pickup. They even take away the Thresh as well on top of that Kalista, so they've got their bot lane already locked in. And this may not even be a jungle Gragas from the hopper, but we'll see how that one works out.
Well, yeah, we're not watching Gambit this time around, so I'm not too worried about any kind of oddball picks right now from the Mouse lineup, but that Kalista is very, very strong. And in the hands of Kobe, I think we actually did see it in one game previously. Maybe didn't go so well for him. I believe he was 1-3 in that game, so not quite the performance previously, but again, we've seen how Senkux has improved his Azir. Has Kobe improved his Kalista? I would have to think yes.
Yeah, I mean, the lineup as a whole looks improved, so yeah, I'd have to assume the individuals are. So Mouse have locked in the next 2 picks. It will be Gnar in the top lane again for Binsu, and it will be now Kog'Maw, which well, in previous days, sometimes you would look in the bot lane for the AD carry, but has seen a lot of play recently in the mid lane from pretty much, well, most regions have picked it up now for the long-range poke and a much slower-paced composition.
So I really like this out of Mouse. This is actually a flex for them. They have played it in both the AD and the mid lane role in the qualifier already in previous weeks. So this now doesn't really show Team Dignitas all that much, but when you look at the lineup, we know Team Dignitas want to last pick their mid lane anyway, and they were looking for jungle and top, so Team Dignitas aren't showing anything particularly strong either at the same time. Or when I say particularly strong, of course, I just mean when it comes to solo lane counters. I tripped up myself over my own words by saying Maokai and Rek'Sai weren't strong, which is not the intention at all.
Yeah, ignore that. Anyway, so Ashe will be the next pickup alongside Janna, and Ashe has, since her rework, just looked great. I mean, you have the global Hawk shot, which NA has been talking about a whole lot of.
Okay, we'll get to that in game.
Ignore everything. Because Ekko has been picked up, and it looks like it will be going to the mid lane as well for Senkux. And you know, we were both chatting in the break, and it's like, well, Ekko is a Senkux champion, right?
Yeah, it feels to me very much so like a champion that Senkux is going to play. It has assassin potential. It's just going to get absolutely snowballing out of control. I want to see this matchup a little bit later to see how Ekko faces up against a ranged champion like Kog'Maw. But overall, down the line, Team Dignitas, not the most amount of wave clear when it comes to it. Kalista needs a lot of time to start clearing things around Ekko. Yes, he has his Q We still haven't seen his real impact on the game too much, so I don't want to really call that before it happens. Over on the other side, a lot of Siege and Engage potential coming out from Mouse. They've got the Ash with the arrow. They've now got Cogmore to Siege as well. So there is a lot of interesting things coming up in this game.
Oh yeah, there is. There's a lot of question marks as well with this new pick coming out with Ekko, and this will be the first competitive Ekko. And the very first matchup that we see into the Cogmore. You touched very briefly on that, on how the matchup will go. It is a long-range mid laner, which Ekko might struggle a little bit against, at least in the early game, because yes, he has the dash on his E, he's got a dash, and then a short-range blink, and he also has the CC, but it takes 3 seconds to wind up and actually get there. So you might find it a little difficult to get on top of the worm.
And that is the most interesting thing about this setup, is we haven't seen Ekko in competitive play yet at all. This is, I think, we're the first
it has to be,
official games that are allowing Ekko through, because this is the first week he's available for LCS and that, and LCK doesn't start till tomorrow. Maybe LPL. Depending on their schedule, I you know, been... working so hard on these qualifier teams that I haven't caught every single game in the world. But
there's a lot.
There are a lot of games, but this is the most interesting one right now for me, because Ekko's in this.
Right. So as this is the first time we are seeing Ekko, we should probably break down what he does, because there's going to be a lot of people out there who just see this champion and it's just like, well, I saw the cinematic and he can go back in time and stuff, but what does he actually do?
What does he actually do? That is it. What doesn't he do is the easier list to start with, because it has so much in it that is just incredibly intricate. So basically, melee range champion has a projectile that slows, deals damage, and deals damage on return as well. Has a very intricate W that places an area on the floor. We'll get to the more intricate details of that as we get into the game.
This is just surface level for now.
Basically, slows... stuns if you enter it when an enemy is in it, gets a shield. Like you got it. Yeah, like that's about all. But the real key to playing Ekko and being a good Ekko player is using your ultimate, because you're followed around by the shadow of what happened 4 seconds ago. So you basically have a clone following you all times, and you hit your ultimate, you go back to where the clone was and deal massive, massive damage. So that is what we're looking for from Senkux, because it adds another dynamic to the game. Is you have to think of, or at least keep track of visually, where was I 4 seconds ago?
Yeah, what was I doing 4 seconds ago? Oh yeah, I face planted that wall. I don't want to do that again. Like, yeah. So
where can I go in 4 seconds time that they're gonna walk in and I can annihilate them as they cross?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of cool videos on Reddit of people doing just that.
I've seen a lot of fails as well.
I've also
seen a lot of
well.
Ekko fails. Yeah. So certainly a high skill cap champion. I do wonder if he will struggle to get to Seu as a Cogmore, being quite so far back. That is going to be a tricky one. And he's running Ignite Flash, so no like Ghost on top of it. Again, we haven't seen Ekko in enough competitive play to know exactly what is the right setup, but I would imagine Ignite just for the kill pressure is going to work out fairly well for him.
Well, he is an assassin, so it does make sense. But also, we didn't mention his passive, so, which is auto attack. So think like Vayne, where you get those free procs. A bit like Gnar is probably a better comparison.
Gnar is.
And then you get a huge amount of damage. It's actually a 0.7 scaling on that, which is quite a lot. Z Drive Resonance, I believe it's called.
Z Drive Resonance.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
True story.
I did not know that. Should we do the Ekko quiz? Do you want me to? No, I'm not going to quiz you. I'm not going to quiz you. It's okay. I won't put you on that
quiz
spot. Ah, dear. No, I've had enough of that from Spring Split. I just... if you guys are wondering, we are having some slight connection issues with one of the Mouse players.
This is not the Ekko talk show. We are actually here for a reason. We're not just talking heads for the sake of it.
Yeah. So once we hopefully get that sorted, it will... we will be into game fairly shortly, but...
yeah, it's actually a problem with Cedrian, as far as we can tell. So as soon as he's back in game, we'll be in game to watch him, not be disconnected to actually play the game. But we'll see how Ekko does in this composition, right? Because we talked about him being an assassin, he can make plays, but he's again against this big tanky front line, and will he be able to get to the backline, essentially. Because you look at other assassins like LeBlanc, like Zed, who are super good at assassinating a target, but with like a Gragas ultimate coming out, is he still going to be able to get in there? Because he has to be in the place 4 seconds ago to jump all the way in, otherwise he's only got a short-range dash, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and it's not only that, is like if you can read where he was 4 seconds ago, if you're... This is where we start getting into the real in-depth levels, is now Cedrian playing Ashe. Can he Ashe ult with the travel time of 4 seconds to kind of predict that's like super
yeah. And the other thing is they have to have vision of him
Yeah.
At the same time, because if you don't have vision of Ekko, you can't see his clone thing that follows him around 4 seconds ago.
Yeah, you can't, and that's...
So
it's an interesting mechanic, because I mean, like, I agree with that. Otherwise, you could just like walk into like a bush and,
and be
stand
like,
there,
huh.
and the clone's just like, oh, that's where he is. Got him.
Yeah, tracked him down. Yeah, that would be very annoying actually as an Ekko player, because it was back in the old days when Malzahar minions didn't know what they were doing and they would just like follow you everywhere and wouldn't walk into a bush, and you'd just be like stood there recalling, and one would just be like sat there and was like, I wonder where Malzahar is. Yeah, so it's not quite like that. But if we draw a comparison to the previous game, last game we saw Azir. Late game, Ekko, late game, but in a very different capacity. That's a really difficult sentence to say very quickly. But Azir, constant sustained damage, where Ekko is just looking to blow a target up or even a bunch of targets up, but requires a lot of planning, in the same way that Azir does as well.
Yeah, and I think that's just something that Senkux has shown us that he's rather good at. If his Azir is anything to go by, planning out little plays like the Shurima shuffles we saw in the last game, certainly seems to be his forte. But something I actually was going to talk about in Champion Select, but we kind of got derailed by the Ekko point, was this Ashe-Janna synergy. Because Janna is like the queen of disengage. Ashe is an engage tool. I guess you can kind of use it as a disengage, but when you look at how Fnatic were playing with Ashe in week 1 of the LCS, it was as kind of a primary engage tool. Just very interesting between those two. Ashe is very low mobility, so Janna is going to assist there, pushing people away like an Ekko that is going to try and dive on top of her. So there are kind of these team fight synergy aspects, but certainly as a lane, doesn't seem to be all that much upfront synergy.
Yeah, and also as a composition, this is different from what they were running last game. Like, they didn't necessarily have a problem with it, but this time they're running a much slower composition. They have an Ashe who's going to scale up. They have the Kog'Maw who's going to scale up as well. Don't necessarily have the same early game as they did before with the Rek'Sai, so we definitely have something different here. But as an update, Cedrian is reconnecting, and Senkux also disconnected, is now reconnecting as well. So we'll see if we can get into the game somewhat soon, but it will take a little bit longer.
Hopefully it should only take Senkux 4 seconds.
Yeah, I'm currently hearing it will just be a couple more minutes, so yeah.
It's okay. I'm going to cut down on the Ekko jokes right now, because...
I don't think you've made any yet.
I did, but I think you were being talked to at the same time, so it kind of just went whoosh.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. It happens. It happens to the best of us.
I mean, you'll be annoying everyone out there who heard the joke, but you won't be annoying me, so it's fine.
Okay. It happens. I found that that's kind of what has devolved to being partly my role. Other than being the subject of pet names from QuickShot, it has been making bad food-related jokes and getting flamed for it. But it's okay. I'm happy to fill this role. It's a good role.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Ready, steady, go. Whatever.
That is not going to make sense to so many of our viewers that are not from the UK. But you know, one thing actually is we got a last minute is the UK. We've got a few more players now in Challenger as a nation, and honestly, that this has started to become a lot more of a national kind of setup here. We've got the full Danish lineup. Now we've got a lot more players from the UK. We've got a lot of Polish players on Reason. Seems to be a lot of unity within a lot of the Challenger teams. I'm looking forward to seeing more kind of national players.
Yeah, it's really nice to see, and we're in a game!
The game is really nice to see as well. That is beautiful. The most nice thing to see. The most nice. Wait. Okay. Either way, Miles and Team Dignitas EU hitting the rift. Got there eventually. And Sayo singing a little ditty. I would too.
Not that exact one. But either way, Senkux on Ekko, walking into this mid lane, or rather into the jungle. See if they go for a level 1 play. Haven't seen anything from these two teams just yet, but they do have a Fresh, do have that early game hook. They also have the lockdown from Wonderware if they really need it, but he's actually gone for the sapling first. So, not sure if they will go for this, or they will actually. Nisbeth leading a charge. Will they see Mountain? Well, Mountain's seen them for sure, and they'll continue the aggression. The rest of the team is fanned out from Mouse, so they won't be able to stop them from getting the vision in their jungle, but it will mean that Dan and Sayo will be heading into that upper jungle and getting their own wards down. And I believe that ward is out of the turret range as well down there, so they will be able to see the lane swap if they potentially go for it, that being from Mouse.
Yeah, they will be able to see it,
there
but as of yet, there we go. As you said, Mouse will get that ward down. Interestingly, Senkux hasn't skilled anything yet. It's, I assume it's just going to be a Q skill to begin this. Is not really all that useful elsewhere. But meanwhile, as you said, Team Dignitas have a good amount of vision down in this bottom side of the map. But everything after those wards has been all quiet on the blue side front, as nobody has really shown. Janna did just cross over that bottom lane ward. So they will now know that Janna is down there, and they have seen her start to cross in towards the Krugs camp. So they will be aware that Maus are starting on their Krugs.
Oh, it gets it on the reverse swing. Very nice. And it's just the little things, you know, when leashing, sometimes you've got to spice it up when you're helping out your jungler. And Dan will be heading, or Bintu will be heading to lane. That was actually a very big pull for Dan in the jungle. But this is a not as aggressive a jungler as Dan was playing last game, so we'll see if we can have the same impact. And this is the exact same start of top lane we saw last game.
Not quite so aggressive, perhaps, but certainly has as much impact on the game. Gragas in the early game is able to trade fairly well. His early clear is good as well, so Dan shouldn't be at a loss for anything as he continues through the jungle here against Obvious's Rek'Sai. But I guess this is the contrast now, is when you swap the jungle champions around, can you make more impact than your opposing jungler did in the last game? Meanwhile, level 2 was taken for bottom lane for Team Dignitas before the Mouse bot lane, so they were able to zone them out. And Senkux already getting his dancing shoes on.
Yeah, with that nice phase dive, juking that minion. Didn't know what to hit it. Nisbet now on that Fresh, showing Mountain how it's done. Mountain now on the Janna with Sejun, his trusty AD carry. Does have the trigger finger on the shield here. And I saw down flashing up red, but he's just trading off the red buff. So in this mid lane, Ekko versus Kog'Maw, with the reindeer skin no less, will be poking away. This early game, you would have to assume, is just going to be difficult for him. It's not like he can do too much aggression onto a Kog'Maw.
I guess that's a good thing about being the boy who shattered time, is you can kind of have as many Christmases as you want.
It's true, as long as it was 4 seconds ago.
Somewhere around the world, it was probably Christmas 4 seconds ago, but
not sure that's how
nevertheless,
time
that's exactly wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. That is exactly how time works.
Reference.
But Senkux in this middle lane, we're going to see if he can figure out how time works as it is.
How
But
tunnels
obvious
work, for sure. Yep. Doesn't land the Praise Seeker. Oh, gets the knock-up turning the hop onto Binsu. Means he has to flash away. Gets the Queen's Wrath as well. And the follow of the last auto and the last arcane smash comes in for the first blood in top lane for Wonderware. But the action's not done yet as Dan comes into the bottom lane and forces the flash from Nisbet. Doesn't secure the kill, but grabs a Summoner. Really
nice knock-up up in the top lane onto Binsu. You saw it there, just catching him right as he jumped. And that is how you want to gank this early on. And Obvious managed to get himself all the way into the enemy jungle and up into the top lane. Is a very impressive start. But that's what we were saying, is you now swap the jungle onto the other side. And immediately, Obvious is having more of an impact than Dan did in the beginning of the last game.
So, Sayo in the mid lane has gone back to base and picked up a 4-minute tier, so he'll be stacking it up and we'll be tracking that progress as we go through the early and mid game, see how fast he can get that. As a result, Senkux was able to push the minions to his turret, but he shouldn't be losing too much as he literally just gets there right on time.
I see what you did there. Don't try and slip in jokes like that.
I don't know what you mean.
All I can see now is that is that a yo-yo that that Ekko has brought back, like, from the future? Because it certainly looks like it.
A futuristic yo. If in the future yo-yos hurt you on the way back,
it's not the weirdest thing that could happen. I mean,
weaponized yo-yos. and weaponized
Sounds like
void
something out of
creatures
Spy Kids,
in the top
but
lane.
Binsu.
Oh,
again!
Again, he gets the knockup on the hop as Bitsu comes out of the bush. Obvious just comes in with the damage. That's all he needs to do. A second kill over to Wonderwear. We were joking in the first game about how Maokai doesn't have a whole lot of kill pressure, but when there's a Rek'Sai always landing the knockup when you're trying to escape from it, you're going to get the kill every time.
Ooh, Senkux threw his W forward, looks to engage.
Ooh, phase dive into the Time Winder, but all had to back off to the turret. Takes a barrel in return. Greg is delivering Christmas with the barrel and will be leaving.
No real way for Dan to get further into that lane right there, but they did get the flash from Senkux, and we already talked about how that the E is fairly short and has that second criteria of needing the second blink to be a follow-up from an auto attack. So not all that safe in lane is Senkux right now, but will have his ultimate available fairly shortly. Dan is spending a lot of time not farming though, and that is going to delay his level 6 here in this game, and they really need Dan to have his ultimate so they can capitalize a little better on these ganks.
Yeah, that is a problem that we saw in the last game, in fact, where he would get a nice gank in a lane, but never really follow up on that and actually get anything from it. Again, the exact same scenario has happened in mid lane, where Senkux doesn't have his flash. We just need to see if Dan goes into mid lane again while the flash is down. There's the parallel convergence, but there was no Ekko to jump into it, and there was no void creature to jump into it either.
And like, this is one of the most difficult things to balance, is you have to get that W, get the field down on the floor and get to it on top of your opponent. And against such a long-range champion like a Kog'Maw, that can be difficult here. It's going to be down to kind of a lapse of judgment, perhaps, from Zai. But bottom lane...
point blank hook onto Mountain, looking for that follow of the damage from Carbe. Does he have the damage? Comes in with the Ren, not quite enough. Cedrian does activate his Q and put down a little more damage in return. Mountain did have to flash, exhaust, and the heal had to be used from Cedrian from that trade, so did get the better of them there. Carbe did use his flash, and the Ignite was used, so someone is burnt from both teams, but Dignitas EU getting a little further ahead from that exchange.
Yeah, and they are a fair way ahead early on in this game. The last game was not quite this lead at this point for Team Dignitas. If you remember, Mouse held themselves to a fairly close difference between the two. Senkux waits for the Time Winder, picks up his blue buff, and will head back to lane. But honestly, right now, everything's even in this game other than the top lane, which this time has gone in favor of Team Dignitas. And you can see Senkux not comfortable with the all-in that close to the turret without minions. He didn't really know where Dan was either. Yeah,
just throws out the weaponized yo-yo, and that'll be enough for him. He will be trying to freeze this wave in the right place. Actually, just where you can see the clone there, and that will make it a little more difficult. It will mean that Sayo will have to walk a little bit further forwards to get the CS he wants, and might put him in range for Senkux to deal fatal damage to him. Get harassed.
Wow, okay, that's...
Got him.
Yeah, got him indeed. But honestly, this top lane matchup is going spectacularly badly for Binsu right now. Here comes the all-in from Senkux.
Oh, the Time Winder and the phase dive. Oh, that's a lot of damage with the passive as well coming into effect. And actually, I think he was in range for ult.
You could see what Senkux was trying to set up there. As he walked back, you could see Sayo pushed himself forward and was like, wait, I have to back away from this, the clone that is oncoming. As the shadow, as we said, that's where Senkux will be jumping back to. That the second copy of himself that's following himself around. It's 4 seconds behind, and the ultimate brings you to where that is, and deals massive amounts of damage.
Yeah. In the top lane, though, it's actually interesting how this has gone. Those two early kills has meant that Wonderwear's been able to put down a lot of pressure. The exact opposite of how the top lane went last game, how Binsu was so far ahead in the exact same matchup. So it definitely shows how jungle presence can affect a lane so differently. Bot lane, Obvious was looking for a gank, but the gank was too obvious, and they weren't able to go for it. He's sitting right on top of a ward, though. Did take the Scuttle Crab, so does have the vision over it, but can't quite go for the dragon just yet. And the Thunderbolt has definitely swung even further ahead in Team Dignitas EU's favor. Dan comes in. Obvious will get the smite down away from it, though. So takes that one home.
Is that vote that way because Ekko has been picked in this game? Or is it because of how convincing the Team Dignitas performance was in Game 1? I would like to think It's a little from column A and a little from column B at this point. But I certainly am happy to see the boy who shattered time in this game. But it's been a slow one to begin with. And again, it's because Team Dignitas are just getting leads in lane. They're just creeping their advantage and just making sure they are in a level playing field against Mouse and getting themselves ahead from it.
So Sayo still stacking up his tier. He is still trying to work his way towards the Archangels and has picked up the needlessly large rod now. He is slightly behind Senkux in terms of farm, but not all that much. As this wave bounces into him, he'll start evening that one up. Senkux, though, has picked up the Morellonomicon. Actually very interested to see what type of build he goes for here, because seen a lot of Echoes go for Ludens, the Lich Bane just for even more burst, but has opted towards the Morello for the little bit of cooldown reduction and the mana regeneration.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of different things. Abyssal Scepter, I think a lot of European mid laners have been building fairly recently, but certainly again, it's fairly untested in competitive play. I know that teams really have only started playing with Ekko this week because he was unavailable for LCS last week. So a lot of what teams generally do is just not play a champion until he's actually available because it makes for different practice. But Wonderwear is heading down to the bottom lane. That's right behind the turret.
Oh, the 5-man collapse coming in here for Mouse, and it looks like Beansu's joining the action as well. Obvious is dropping low. He'll be going down. Beansu picks up that kill. Mountain as well flashes into the turret. Everyone is taking so much damage from this one. Cedrian has to back off. He jukes out of the way of the Arcane Smash, but it won't keep him alive. Beansu, one more auto attack. Does not finish him off, and the return down from the tower is enough. Senkuk comes through. Oh, gets blasted by Dan's ultimate instead. Doesn't use his own. Wonderwear now gets closed in. There's the double kill for Dan. Oh, the pullback, and Sayo is getting dragged into the turret. One more turret shot does not come across, and that was incredibly bloody. It looks like a 3-for-1 in favor of Mouse.
Senkuk didn't use his ult there because it would have put him back into the tower range right in between 3 people. I was trying to track the clone as it was going through the fight, but Team Dignitas committed so much, and I want to take a look again because this played out very weirdly. Nisbet gets brought back out, and it gives Obvious the tower aggro a lot earlier than he was expecting. And look at the crowd control here from Mountain, pushing him down into the wall. It seals Obvious' fate way before this fight even begins. This is where Senkux manages to jump himself in, and let's keep a track of the clone here, because after this massive Gnar ultimate, there's really nobody for Senkux to ult back onto. Yes, Cedrian dies here, but here's the point I was kind of thinking about. Could he have ulted here? And no, look how many people are just too close to him at this point. He would have been right in front of a full health Cogmore, and it would have just been too much damage for Senkux to have survived through.
So there was actually a single second where he could have used his ultimate to have killed Beansu in that fight. It would have meant he would have died as well, but
right.
Beansu, he would have taken someone down with him, but at that point, it kind of looked like Senkuk to get away until Dan came in, so.
Yeah, one thing to keep a track of is that when you do ult with Ekko, you get a percentage of the health, the percentage of the damage you've taken back as health in the last 4 seconds when you reappear. It's a little bit wordy, but that is what happens. And what happens to Sayu is he's going to get aggressed on by Obvious.
Yeah, Obvious is not using his words, he's using his fangs right now. Onto Dan, will be getting the knock-up onto the Gragas. Comes up with the Time Winder, doesn't do enough damage with all of the procs to deal enough damage to the tanky Gragas. Didn't have his ultimate just in case he overextended into the turret. Would have blasted them back into his team. But now Wonderwear is closing in from the top side. There's the parallel convergence coming in, looking for the stun, and gets it down, but didn't really need it because his target was dead anyway. Comes up with the Fresh Lantern, will be able to get back to safety. Nice kill onto Sayo in the mid lane, and Dan will just be trying to take his red buff away before it's invaded on by Obvious. And the mid lane will be going over to Team Dignitas.
2-1-1 on this Ekko now for Senkux, and I was thinking, looking at today's lineups, is if any player is going to play Ekko, who's it going to be? And Senkux was certainly on my list of players that were likely to have been practicing him. Did drop into a couple of his solo queue games where he was playing Ekko, so I guess that's a little bit of knowing what was coming slightly. But certainly, this is a good start for Ekko in the EUCS, being up ahead of their lane opponent on the Cogmore. And let's be real, Cogmore has pretty much wreaked havoc for a couple of teams across the LCS. We've seen a lot of the Unicorns of Love playing him. We've seen Cloud9 playing Cogmore as well. That hasn't gone quite so well for them as the Unicorns, but this certainly seems to be a matchup that Senkux has looked into and has practiced.
Yeah, tried to set up the combo there, but it's pretty difficult because you have to think not only 4 seconds into the past, but 3 seconds into the future when you use parallel convergence, since it takes so long to wind up. And even though your opponents can only see it in the last half a second, it's still pretty difficult to get in on the right place, because you've got to look like you're not doing anything up until you are. Don't mind being dead.
You gotta look like you're just innocent up until that point. And they have that cast animation, where the shadow
somewhat
hits it
well,
forward. Yeah, it's like, oh, he's playing baseball.
Yeah. With that explosive device. Senkux heading into the top lane. Senkux heading into the mid lane.
So, he could just fake him out. Go up past the ward, go all the way back, ult up, but in bottom lane, Ash ult.
That's where the action's happening. Ash ult, the Gragas ultimate actually just blasts the Kallistra away, who pulls Nisbet back into him and secures her escape. All nicely set up by the Gragas ult.
And the thing is, Mouse right now can't even look towards the Dragon. They know they're fairly far behind right now. They don't have the map control really to do it. Yes, they have some wards around the Dragon area, but Obvious was already on this bottom side of the jungle. And Ekko has got a lot of freedom to leave his lane at the same time. So right now, Mouse again have not been able to take any kind of objectives or really have any real impact on the game. It was basically just that play that Team Dignitas wanted to make that kind of backfired with the dive under the tower once Beansu appeared, that has set this game up for at least Mouse to not be quite so far behind.
And now the Dragon is being started up by Team Dignitas EU here. It was actually 15 minutes before we even saw a Dragon attempt the last game as well. This time is going to be pretty much the same scenario. It's going to be Senkux coming in, trying to get the Assassinate down. Does ult back to safety. The pull through from Nisbet gets the Flay down as well. Obvious looking for the knockout, will get it. Senkux comes in with the phase dive. Wasn't enough to take him down with the last auto. And now he will be backing away. So not only do they net the Dragon, they get a Gragas on top of that for free.
Oh man, Senkux managed to just utilize the lack of vision that Mouse had in that area. Just throw down his W, jump on top of it. And yes, he didn't manage to kill Sayo that the first time, but it was enough for the follow-up to just make sure they could pick up Dan. And now bottom lane is getting pressured out as well. No minions left means that Team Dignitas have to back away, but really, Team Dignitas have managed to get themselves quite a substantial lead from CS down in that bottom lane already, and damage onto the turret. Obvious. There we go.
That's a ward, mate.
There we go. Has realized he's on a ward.
Yep. Let's take a look at some of the items. I spoke about the tier. It is not fully stacked just yet. It is definitely still stacking. Luden's Ekko has been the first completed item from Sayo. That's what he decided to go for. Meanwhile, Senkux looking for the Zhonya's Hourglass, it looks like, with the Seeker's Arm Guard with his first pick up there. Top lane, the Righteous Glory has been completed by Wonderwear. It is essentially the item that Maokai needs, and he's set for life. All he does from there is just get tanky and tankier. But that's all he needs to initiate, get in from the flank. Beansu did the same as last game, went for the Warmog's armor. Actually, not the build we spoke about in Game 1 Champion Select you were talking about. Maybe potentially seeing the Black Cleaver build that we've been seeing with the Frozen Mallet. Not going to be seeing that, despite being locked in the 1-for-1 for a while here. Has gone for the more team fight orientated build.
Yeah, and he knows up against the Maokai he needs just a touch of magic resist. It's not super necessary, but it certainly needs to get tanky at the same time. So he knows his role right now is not to completely dominate Wonderwear. It's more to turn around any team fights they can when they can get him to teleport in. But quite frankly, it worked out the first time. They managed to get a 3-man ultimate down underneath the tower. So Beansu seems to be playing his role pretty well right now.
Well, Obvious has been spotted, but Obvious has also spotted what spotted him, and places down another ward, and places an interesting ward down. Meanwhile, in the bot lane, Ash Arrow lands right onto Kobe. Will we see a repeat of what happened before? There's the ultimate this time, knocking the Kalista back into his team. Nisbet turns around, gets the hook down, but he's not going to be dying to that turret anytime soon. They did pick up the AD carry, but there's no real objective for Mouse to take on top of that. They can maybe push in the bottom lane, though.
But this is the kind of play that they need to be making. And honestly, it's good that Mouse are now starting to get themselves out onto the map, into lanes, and utilizing Dan's effectiveness now that he is post 6. They've used his ultimate a couple of times. This time it gets them another kill. And this is how Mouse needs to start getting back into this game. They're 4,000 gold down with only 1 tower in the lead of Team Dignitas, so they aren't going to be able to win this game in straight-up lanes. They have to group, and they have to put the pressure when Team Dignitas are fairly isolated.
Yeah, and they have a composition as well here which can contest objectives like Dragon, like towers even, with that Cogmore, but it needs a lot of setup. It needs them to poke people instead of just engaging straight up, because then the Cogmore can't really do its job. And that's a very different play style from what Mouse were running last time with the Sivir, where they were just looking to run at the opponent and hope for the best. So we'll see if Mouse can actually utilize that composition, because I don't feel they really used the last one to its maximum effectiveness.
Yeah, and they haven't grouped yet. They've already gone past the quintessential Power of Evil level 11 power spike on Cogmore, where you get that extended range on the ultimate. So they haven't really got that, or haven't used that yet. But one thing Team Dignitas are going to try and use is Ekko in the top lane.
Oh, and does get the parallel convergence down. That long 2.25 second stun will mean that Beansu is not going anywhere. The constant CC, the constant lockdown, and then all that burst damage on top of it. Senkox comes in for the kill.
4-1-1 on this game, and I would argue that Senkox doesn't even feel like he's having a particularly flashy game when it comes to it. This kind of just feels like he's taking kills here and there. It doesn't feel like he's quite made the plays yet. That's the first one, really, that he's managed to roam around and get a kill straight up without losing too much from it. Saying that, they do lose a tower, but they should trade it up for the top lane tower.
Yeah, I feel like while it's been very good, I could see Senkox doing this with a plethora of different champions as well.
Yes, I agree.
Ekko hasn't necessarily done anything specific this game. However, he did just get hit by an ultimate from Sayo, and we'll have to choose a different spot to recall. That one is warded, but there is no one to disrupt them there. And taking a look at the item builds across the map as well, bot lane has finished up its both Bloodthirster and also the Hurricane from Kobe. So he has hit his own spike in power. There is 1 minute till the Dragon, so we're going to start seeing these item spikes and how they interact across the map. Zayo has also finished up his Archangel staff. Has not fully stacked that either. And remember, that was a 4-minute tier, and it's now 22 minutes into the game, and it's still not fully stacked.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, actually. That's a fairly long stack on that. It is nearly there. It's at 673. So he's close to getting it, but I mean, one way that Team Dignitas can look to pressure this game further for Mouse is kind of rely on dominating the blue buff for Mouse. Is if Mouse don't get blue buff onto this Cogmore, their damage is so much more limited. They're not able to output as many Cogmore ultimates, they can't clear so many waves, and it becomes difficult for Sayu to really do anything in team fights. So I look for Team Dignitas to end up having complete control over that top side jungle.
Well, in that mid lane, clearing out all of those minions, setting up for this Dragon here. There has been a lot of Rek'Sai tunnels going down. Tries to get the parallel convergence across. There's Beansu going into the fight, though. He's almost got the Gnar bar filled up, but not quite there yet. And while he's not this big angry Gnar that's been capitalized on, he finally gets it down, but only the ultimate onto the big tanky members of Team Dignitas. Senkox over the wall, looking to blow the back line. Can he get there in time? He has to ult back to safety. And Wonderwear now with Obvious trying to get into the own back line of Mounds. Cedric has to flash away from big scary Senkox. Wonderwear trying to get this initiate down, gets the lockdown onto Cedric with the twisted advance. Oh, the long range death sentence in from this Beth will eventually lock down Janna as well. Beansu also bites the dust, and just like that, Team Dignitas have established control over this Dragon. Another hook onto Dan, in with the Flay as well. Not quite enough damage. There's Kobe in with the ultimate. Will be getting his support to safety, literally inches away from death, but they should be able to turn around and go for this Dragon.
Really precarious fight by Team Dignitas. They kind of jump around with Senkox a lot in that fight, and so many of their carries took damage, but they just were able to balance all of the saving ultimates, the lantern, all of the shields that they had to make sure that they could survive that fight, and Mouse got baited in again. This is a very intricate fight, so I want to take another look at how it exactly played off, because look, Team Dignitas got a little bit caught out to begin with, but Beansu turns it around once he had dropped low. Senkux at this point gets clipped by the arrow, and it means that when he jumps in, yes, he gets the shield, but look at how much damage he took from that. Had to ult out rather than for damage. And again, it's basically a repeat play as Senkux tries to go forward onto Cedrian, but Sayu knows what's coming. Already has an ultimate prepped, and just the amount of damage already done. If Cedrian hadn't died there and then, it would have been curtains for Senkux in that fight. And another similar thing happened to Nisbeth. And it's just good balancing of saving ultimates and you know, making sure that everybody could get out of that fight, and they get away with it with the dragon.
The unfortunate thing was that Mouse didn't want to go for that fight right there. They just wanted to wait for a little bit longer just so Sayo could land all of those ultimates pre-fight. But
yeah,
Beansu kind of got hooked and they kind of had to fight. So yeah, in future though, they're not that far behind. They definitely have a way into a fight because the health bars were super low from Team Dignitas at the end of that. Now it might be a little harder after that lost team fight plus the dragon as well going over to them. Team Dignitas have built up a significant gold advantage. The lanes have not been able to quite keep pace as they did last game as more kills have gone over, but either way, Mauser definitely still in this game for sure. Lots of big items have been completed, lots of big power spikes, but Team Dignitas EU have picked up a couple more items, more components if anything. See the death cap now looking to be completed by Senkux. The Bill's Water has been picked up now by Copy as well.
Cedrian, meanwhile, has himself 2 items and is taking down a red buff for himself as well. So, I mean, Mouse right now are further behind in this game than they were in the last. When you look at just basically gold and dragons together, maybe not so much on turrets. By this point, Team Dignitas had taken down a few more turrets in the last game. But that's not a good sign for Mouse at all. Like, Mouse, they made these changes to their lineups. The impact from Dan hasn't really been felt. Sayu has been doing okay, but he's just up against one of the best mid laners we've got in the EU CS. And I will go out on paper and say Senkux is mechanically probably one of the top 3 mid laners we have.
Yeah, that's not a lie at all. Yeah, definitely a very talented mid player here. There's Gromp. Needs to be taken away by Obvious. There's a parallel convergence. We'll be getting the slow onto Mountain, but wasn't quite able to get in range with the phase dive. It's so difficult to set up, but so rewarding if you do.
Yeah, I'd be interested actually to see how Senkux stacks up against LCS mid laners, because I say top 3 in CS. I think there's some very interesting matchups if you go further up the chain on that one as well. So that's something that maybe we'll find out a long way down the line in the next season. But I am certainly happy to have him here. Maybe in Challenger if they can win this. Because this is a best of 3, so it's not all over for Mouse yet. If they can get a good fight, if they can group, get a good Nara engage after poking down with the Cogmore, it still could go their way, but it certainly is a very tall order for them right now.
Yeah, and even if a team gets knocked out here today, there is still the 3rd place game tomorrow for another spot and another chance. So it's not all over if you lose here. From Mouse or even Team Dignitas on how the series goes. As the Time Winder does not quite connect onto Cedrian, but this is the 1v1 in the bot lane where an Ashe really doesn't want to be going one-on-one against an assassin. Top lane though, there's the hook onto Dan. Not quite the initiating target, but there's a lot of wave clear from Mouse.
And you can see what Senkux is starting to do with these parallel convergences. You throw them behind a target, and you essentially force them to come closer to you because they know they can't run back, even though they don't see the zone until about half a second, but Kobe didn't see that arrow.
No, I don't think anyone did. Oh, tries to take the lantern, gets taken down in transit. Meanwhile, Wonderwear tried to get away there, but the ultimate from Dan was able to lock him back into his team. Wasn't quite enough to get the kill there, but nice pick onto Kobe. There's just the straight up strength of Ashe being able to catch people from across the map.
And that's a really good setup from Mouse. That's the other option that they have is, yes, they can poke people down and then look to engage, but an Ashe arrow onto a stray member of Team Dignitas will give them a numbers advantage, and at this point now they can siege with this composition. They can start landing the poke with Cogmore, start throwing out those volleys, but Mouse have got to make quick work of this turret because they can't afford to stand around, otherwise they give Senkux the chance to maybe look to engage. But with the numbers in their favor, Mouse will push down the turret, and Dragon is coming up in 1 minute's time. If they can slow Team Dignitas' 5 Dragon attempt, then they should be a lot better off than the future currently looks for them.
Yeah, nice couple picks from Mouse. We saw that early game as well where they're able to get picks, but they weren't able to really convert it into anything. Now that we're getting into the mid game, they are able to take towers from it. So if they can make any more lasting damage happen, Mouse would be in a much happier spot. But now blue going over to Sayo is so important. Will allow him to poke and poke and poke in the future. And with 25 seconds to go on the Dragon, perfect timing.
Yeah, this would be Dragon number 3 for Team Dignitas. At this point in the last game, they actually had Baron buff, if you remember rightly. It was the 2-man Baron that came out from the Azir and the Gragas. This time, Mouse have managed to slow Team Dignitas to only having taken 3 turrets thus far in the game. So this one is going to be a longer game than our first game, regardless of the fact that Team Dignitas are up in gold more than they were in the last game. But they have a lot of big completed items right now. Rabadon's Death Cap on top of the Zhonya's that we'd already seen from Ekko. Swing and a miss on that one. But it is just, I guess it was just like a zoning tool if Mouse were in that bush.
Oh, he's just showing how he can hit a home run.
But what that does show you is that Team Dignitas don't have really the Dragon control when it comes to vision that they need to be in this position. They don't have wards behind Mouse. They don't have a guaranteed exit path here. But it looks like they want to engage. Senkux throws down parallel convergence.
And again, Binsu will be getting picked here for the start of this fight. Dan does manage to pick up the Dragon though, and Mouse, they just need to get out. That essentially done everything they wanted. They picked up the Dragon. They don't want to fight, and now they just want to leave.
Yeah, that's much better out of Mouse. They're playing a lot more calculated at this point. Now they've rooted Team Dignitas out of their base, and Mouse are going to be able to push for another turret here. They should get good damage down on this before anybody from Dignitas can react to it, and it will fall.
There is a teleport, though, in from the back lines from Wunder, where Obvious is low, so it's going to be a 4 versus 5 for this fight, unless he can get back in with his ultimate. Obvious is still very low. Senkux now coming in with the parallel convergence, does get the stun down onto Binsu, goes into the back lines and does Zhonya's right up, flashes out of the way, comes in with a phase dive, comes across, all of it's back, doesn't land the chrono break onto anyone, though. We'll just get back to his team, and the rest of Mouse will just back off, using that Righteous Glory to get back to safety.
Oh, you can see how difficult it is to land that ultimate from Senkux. He thought he was going to connect with Mountain. I think he got a little bit of damage down onto him, but it certainly wasn't as much as Senkux was expecting, and it's so difficult to play these team fights out, especially against a composition like the Mouse composition, which is kind of wanting to stay at a range. They want to kite back with this Ashe, with this Kog'Maw. They don't want to be all standing on top of each other like the previous compositions Mouse were running. So Senkux, although he's 5-1-1, is struggling to really output a lot of damage in these fights because of how often he's called back out of the fight for being low.
Yeah, I think that's like 3 ultimates in a row now. We've seen Senkux not deal for damage, but to jump in and jump out, which is kind of like the classic Zed thing. But it is a whole different ball game.
And that's one of the things that remains to be seen is it so difficult to do that actually ulting to get health back and then re-engage with the rest of your abilities, is that efficient or is that inefficient? Is a real question. I mean, the obvious kind of answer to it is you're not going to kill anyone quite as fast, but if you manage to get all of your health back, or most thereof, and have enough damage on your abilities to take down enemy champions, then possibly that's what we're going to see it utilized as primarily.
Yeah. Very, very possible. Just time will tell, I feel, for a lot of these players. And
do you mind?
That one was unintentional, but either way, I'll take it. So Binsu, Mountain, and Dan make up the whole team from Mouse. That's everyone. Just vying over control here over the Baron pit, just getting all of that vision down. And Team Dignitas not quite able to just sneak that one away so easily this game. But just waiting for an engage really to happen. This is going to be a lot more even when we get to this fight. And Sayo trying to land those ultimates, softening up his target, because that is really then when Mouse will pull the trigger with that Gragas, with Ashe, with all the ways they have to initiate.
So Senkux really wants to try and find somebody like Sayo, like Cedrian, isolated on their own, but this Ashe makes it fairly difficult because, yes, you might find spots where she's out on her own, but the fact that you have a clone that follows you and then Ashe can just hawk shot means that every time you go for a side path on her, she's always going to be able to read it, because theoretically she should have vision on you just from using hawk shot. But down in the bottom lane, Wonderwear has shown himself, and he does not have teleport. So he is going to have to recall. This is actually a bluff by Team Dignitas. They're betting that Mouse won't call their bluff on the fact that teleport is not available.
It's interesting because the last teleport that was used by Wonderwear was to flank them in the mid lane.
Yeah.
So Mouse pretty much had like a rough timer of when it would be, and it's not that close to when the teleport would be available. So it's interesting that Dig made that bluff and Mouse just kind of went along with it.
That's a big misplay out of Mouse when you look at it. Like, that's the kind of thing that will win and lose a game in LCS, is a player just showing when they don't have teleport and not being grouped, because you have the inclination to just go exactly like this that Beansu's trying. He charged up his Narb bar, but look at how split this fight would have been if Mouse were actually looking for it. They would never have been able to chase anybody down from Team Dignitas.
Oh.
They've hit Obvious, though.
Trying to get the pick here. Dan is on those front lines. Everyone is grouped up, but Dan is getting chunked out very quickly. Obvious comes into this fight as well. There's a parallel convergence again, but Mountain is getting pounded here, and now Beansu is also getting locked up by the team of Team Dignitas. Senkook jumps right into the team. Will be ulting a couple spaces back, but it doesn't matter because Mountain will also be falling as Cobby just takes him out with the constant spears and the Ren to finish him. A 3-0, and it doesn't need to be flashy. Team Dignitas can just go for this and go for a fight.
Well, Team Dignitas had nothing to be worried about because they already saw Beansu teleport in right in front of them. They didn't have to worry about a flank because they never had to give it to Beansu. Then they kite back down into the Baron area and force Mouse to fight in a choke. And at that point, Senkooks knows he can throw down parallel conversions, knows he's guaranteed to start getting damage, or at least the slow and the shield coming out here. So I want to take another look exactly how this happened, because Beansu's Gnar or Mega Gnar is already looking to start ticking down. The fight starts and Senkooks actually holds a lot of his abilities for later into this fight. Does manage to pick one kill up with a Time Winder, but no one from Dignitas is committing yet until Mouse are really starting to get themselves back out of this fight. A lot of that is because Dan actually ultimated Team Dignitas away from them, and from there, Mouse just don't have the damage to stay in front of Team Dignitas. And there's most of the cleanup come from Ekko, but one final spear from Kalista.
Yeah, the front line died very quickly from Mouse. And then the rest of the team just kind of keeled over after that. And now that will be the Dragon going over to Team Dignitas EU. That's the third Dragon going over to them now. The fourth in total in this game. 13-6 currently in terms of those kills, but more importantly do have a 7k advantage in terms of gold. So they are definitely ahead of Mouse right now, as that team fight shows as well. But Mouse have not found a perfect fight. They haven't landed an arrow onto a squishy target. They haven't engaged onto an entire team, landed a big Gnar ultimate, landed a big Gragas ultimate. Every single team fight has been slightly off, and Team Dignitas have always, wow, that was a lot of damage, always exposed that. That Lich Bane is doing a lot of damage from Senkooks for split pushing.
It is. Ooh, Cedrin's got to be careful here because Senkooks may just turn it on and go straight into a fight here. One thing to note is you can actually Zhonya's and proc your W. Senkooks has been hit though.
And Mountain is there to follow.
Oh,
what? That's what you've got to be careful for. Senkooks just pulls the trigger, Chrono breaks back into the Ash, and goodbye squishy target.
What was... I didn't even see that play coming. I have to admit. I was like, ooh, Senkooks might be caught. No, clearly he didn't see it coming. Oh, my
All I need
goodness.
is seconds.
Whew. All he needs is 3 or 4 auto attacks on a turret by the looks of it at this point. I mean, we know that Ekko has very good late game damage when he gets there, so the scaling was always going to favor Team Dignitas potentially.
Oh, this is a little bit scary. And it's raining, it's pouring, and Sayo just picks him up with a living artillery coming from the sky. So after that flashy play, just kind of gets shut down in the blaze of glory. But did manage to take the bottom inhibitor off that play though, so did work out in the end from Team Dignitas, just picking up another advantage. And they still have that Baron to make use of, but they got what they came for.
Whew, sorry, I'm still trying to compute what happened with that play.
I'm gonna have to watch that again at some point.
Yeah.
Like, it just all happened so quickly.
happened even faster for Cedrian at that point. There's really no way of him getting out of that. So at this point, Team Dignitas, 10,000 gold up in the lead. We know they have a lot of late game damage when it comes to Ekko. They've got a lot of crowd control when it comes to the rest of their lineup as well. So all they need is one of those pieces of crowd control to hit for the rest to follow up. Mouse, yes, they have a Cogmore, who is fairly well farmed. We're actually going to see it again because...
at 0.25 speed.
Okay, so Senkux... was the clone in the bush? So he kind of just baits Cedrian it. Yes, it was.
Wow.
Oh!
Just the old... 1.3 scaling turns out does a lot of damage.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm just going to leave that for a second. Even the second time I've seen it, the fact that just the health bar's gone.
Yeah,
just
he just dies as fast in slow motion as he does in real time.
It's almost as if, like, it was that whole time paradox thing where Ekko actually just jumps through time, makes it so that, like, Cedrian never existed in this game, and just removes it from it.
Yeah, this is just now a 4 versus 5.
Yeah, that's exactly what this seemed to look like after that kill. But Senkux is back on the split push again. Obvious is 1v3.
And dead.
Didn't go well.
No, it did not. And that was an Ash Arrow, which managed to pick him up in the mid lane. So
okay.
They did manage to get that pick. So obviously can't feel too terrible about that. Still has his flash. Wasn't able to get away from it as he was just kind of stranded right in the middle lane. But that was a pretty long death timer. Doesn't mean that Mouse can do too much with it, though. There is no Dragon, there's no Baron. They did manage to pick up their blue buff, I think, just there. Didn't quite catch it, but there wasn't too much for them to take from it. If Sayu could pick up their blue buff, that is preferable.
He did get their blue buff.
Okay, yeah.
He did indeed pick that up. And yeah, we talked a little bit about how important that is going to be. The problem, though, for Mouse right now, bottom lane inhibitor is still down. Dragon and Baron both coming up. Yes, Mouse managed to pick up that one Dragon for themselves, which crucially now makes it so that Team Dignitas aren't on their 5th Dragon tipping point. The next one they get will be 4. As picking up the Baron would make it even trickier for Mouse at this point with that inhib being down. But Senkux is going to try and make the same play again here. Or at least the same pushing play. I don't know whether he's going to go too much further than pushing, because I don't think Beansu's going to give him the opportunity.
Well, if he is standing on top of himself, then if someone walks into the bush, then he just instantly chrono breaks and will be able to instantly pop them. Well, showing that he can kill the Krugs. Nice. And we'll be finding a different spot to try and ambush someone.
He's going to look for mid lane. Oh, look at the range.
Whoa! Ooh, Cedrian's arrow just flies past Senkux, but now that's the go button for Team Dignitas. Wonderwear looking for the initiate here with his Righteous Glory. And Swiss advance, but doesn't find a target. And we'll be backing off.
I was going to say the go button, but then Senkux started attacking a pink ward. I was like, that's not the way into the fight. I wonder how can Senkux like lead people through the jungle? Is it going to be like the Pied Piper?
Maybe.
You just think you're chasing the Ekko, but in fact you're just going to your death. It's kind of morbid thought, actually, thinking about it.
It's not a fairy tale I would tell to my children.
Well, I mean, have you like ever looked into like the actual origins of fairy tales?
Oh yeah, they're horrible.
They're a lot darker than the fairy tales I was told would lead me to believe. But speaking of nightmares, here comes Wonderwear from the side.
Has the home guard as well. We'll be finding Cedrian, jumps right on top of him. This is a nasty engage. Dan has also dropped low again. The front line is just basically not there, but Nizbez is actually the first one to die in this fight. Wonderwear will also get taken down. In fact, no, he's good to go. Beansu was actually taken out. Finally, the tree will bite the dust, and this is now a 3 versus 4 in favor of Mouse.
In favor of Mouse, this time it goes their way. We talked about it. They got a good amount of range in this fight. Yes, Wonderwear managed to get himself into the back of the fight, but from there wasn't particularly too much that Team Dignitas could do. You saw how fast Nisbet died to start this one off, and Senkux isn't able to output his full rotation of damage every single fight. It's taking a very specific fight setup for him to actually be able to get in there. If you can get onto Mountain, that's a squishy target that won't really fight back, but well, at this point, Team Dignitas probably just going to look for the Baron for themselves if they can get onto it. They have a Kalista. Gragas is in the bottom lane. There's almost no way that Mouse could look to contest this.
Well, Cedrian and Sayo are looking to at least head towards the Baron. Will manage to get the damage onto Copy. Senkux comes in though and just completely blows up Sayo. And will Chrono break back to his team just like that? Instantly pops the Cogmore. And he'll be going down.
I mean, he finds a squishy target, takes as much damage as he likes, and gets all the way out of it as well, and still has health. I mean, it's a play he can only make once every so often, but actually that ult is on a fairly low cooldown when I look at it. Just about 40 seconds on that cooldown currently for Senkux, so it is a play he can make again and again.
Yeah, it's not a lot at max rank. It's around 70 seconds or so, I think. But either way, again, Binsu gets hooked here and will have to back away. Won't be able to get into that Mega Form soon enough. Dan is still getting chunked. The backline of Mouse unable to do too much. And the backline is essentially Cedrian, who is now dead. Dan as well, just trying to get away from this. But Kobe going 1 versus 2 against the front line, who should be trying to kill him, is just murdering them. Senkux now trying to get this last auto down. Will be going right onto that Nog, taking him out. Dan just stands there and accepts his fate. 5-4-0, ace over to Team Dignitas EU, and they are looking to close out this game.
Yeah, they're going straight towards the base here, and they're going to close it out. What a convincing fight once again for Team Dignitas. It looked a lot better this game for Mouse with this sieging composition that we thought maybe could have stalled out the game, but Team Dignitas, they managed to find the good fight. Senkux managed to output a lot of damage, and alongside it, the rest of the team did as well, and Team Dignitas will be booking their spot to Challenger Series.
Yeah, just a very convincing series from them. 2-0 in this one up against Mouse. Mouse definitely looked better from how they did last season. Remember, they ended in last place and did not do too well. But Team Dignitas coming out here looking incredibly strong in the qualifier, and excited to see what they'll bring as we head into the summer split.
They looked quite good. When I like think about the entire lineup as one unit, they looked a lot more solid than we've seen from them in quite some time. And honestly, this full Danish lineup, I think, could go quite far in Challenger Series.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they'll stack up against the other teams we have, of course, who are rejoining us from the last bit, and indeed who will be joining us later today as well. But we do actually have a replay from that game there. It is actually the 3-0 in mid lane that Team Dignitas pulled at around 24 minutes.
So this is where Binsu gets hooked in to begin this fight. He gets caught out, and from here, I want to keep track of where Senkux is, because was this one of the fights where he just couldn't get too much damage? Yeah, he goes all the way in. Look, Zayu even just manages to just not take too much until the rest of the follow-up comes in from Team Dignitas. That then forces them back out of this fight. But from there, the rest of Team Dignitas, Senkux had all of his health back. He manages to jump all the way back into the fight and get out alive. Mountain will fall to end it as well. And honestly, that was a little bit of a messy team fight for Team Dignitas. And as we said, if Senkux can get all of his damage out and not take that much damage and force him back out, then certainly the team fights go a different way.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of very funny fights just in total in that game. There was a lot of fights where Binsu just instantly got death sentence, and then it just kind of all went downhill. But they all looked right, and then the ultimates never really got in the right place, and then Team Dignitas were just kind of far enough ahead that they just kind of won regardless. It was just odd from Mouse.
Again, it kind of felt like Team Dignitas, they didn't win in Champ Select as such. It wasn't a compositional thing too much. Mechanically, they were just making better plays and making better decisions across the map. Mouse are very slow to get themselves in front of objectives, and they did start to contest dragons, started to get themselves turrets as well from getting picks using the Ashe, but they didn't start doing that fast enough, and they didn't really play around the Ekko too much, in the sense that it was very flashy looking from Senkux, but it never really had too much impact.
Yeah. It looked cool, but we'll see if Ekko can really find his niche when it comes to competitive play. But with that win, Team Dignitas EU are now our 4th team in the 2015 EU Challenger Series Summer Split. They'll be joining Copenhagen Wolves Academy, Gamers 2, and Reason Gaming.
What a lineup so far.
Yeah, it's looking
good.
Pretty good for our next split, honestly. Good times.
I'm looking forward to seeing how Copenhagen Wolves Academy are going to perform. We saw good things out of them last split. Came in as underdogs. Now they're very much so a name to beat here in Challenger. Same with Gamers 2. They didn't perform so well. Now they've made changes to their lineup. How are they going to sit? I guess we'll find out fairly soon, as we're